I'd like to present our next panel, entitled Gender-Based Violence in War Zones. It will be moderated by Sophia Kiani from our New York studio. This panel brings together some truly remarkable women who are taking a stand against gender-based violence and leading the effort to help those who have been affected. Over to you, Sophia.
Hello, everyone. This is Sophia, and I am so excited to be speaking with NK, Angela, and Pamela. So let's just kick it right off, and I would love to start with you, Pamela. Can you talk to us about what are the global trends we're seeing in gender-based violence in war zones?
Yes. Hi, it's a pleasure to be here today. I think one of the most important things to recognize around sexual violence in war zones is that there is an issue that is all surrounded by complete silence. So we estimate that from every reported account of sexual violence in war zone, there are at least 10 or 20 that have actually occurred. The second important thing to recognize is that despite there being protection in law around this issue, actually it is used as an open tactic of war. And it's designed to humiliate and degrade the opponent, but also to be able to exert control, especially after taking certain area. It is a way to install fear, and so it's used as a proper tactic of war. One that has so many consequences, Sophia. I mean, physically, we're talking about unwanted pregnancies, STIs, even disabilities coming out of it. I remember very recently speaking to somebody had survived the Rwandan genocide, and all of his family had been killed, but one auntie survived, and so they both felt like the survivors of this big tragedy, only for her to die a couple of years later from AIDS because she had been gang raped several times. That issue really destroyed him. Because, he had somebody and obviously was left, with nobody. So the psychological trauma that comes with it is actually a big issue, not only for the victims, as we can imagine with sexual assault, but also for family members who might feel guilt to trying to protect, to do something. So those consequences are devastating. So in terms of kind of trends, Sophie, I think, one of the important things that we try to do as organizations is to elevate the issue of sexual violence in war zones. It does not matter if there is not a war where I live. If you're an organization, in the case of even a company, just making sure that it's in the forefront of the public. We tend to see a lot of the kind of destroyed buildings, but we don't know what's happening in basements, what's happening in back gardens. And those issues, we need to keep talking about them. So we make sure that our governments, people who are dealing with some of these issues, and the NGOs on the ground are getting the support that they need for victims.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that incredibly important information. I've already learned so much. And now I would love to go to you, Angela. Can you tell us, so Avon is supporting women who are impacted by the war in Ukraine and speaking out against gender-based violence in war zones. So tell us, why is that so important to you?
I think it's critical, and it should be important for the world, not just for a company like ours who believes beauty is not just color and is not just scent of a nice fragrance. Yes, beauty is not shallow. Beauty comes with dignity. Beauty comes in peace. Beauty comes with strong women who can raise their children and take care of their families in a safe environment. And we all know, exactly as Pamela said, this war and the violence in the war zones has a disproportionate impact on women. And if we, as a company, and it's not just about our 135 years mission of empowering women, it's altogether about understanding our role in a society outside of our commercial interest. And we understand very well that without activating, raising our voice for women right to live their life in peace, we wouldn't have the right impact in the society. So for us, it's extremely important to support women, first of all, those who have been victim of violence, We have donated, as of immediately post-war, $200,000 to Red Cross, and now we are donating another $160,000 to UNFPA to really support the direct victims of these atrocities that are happening in the war zone. And we continue now engaging not only with the NGOs, but with the entire community, global community, to come together and say stop, to this nonsense war going on, and understanding with all these stories like Pamela called out, and the stories I hear personally every day from our representatives in Ukraine are horrifying stories. And we really need to make them known, because we are all responsible for what's going on.
And that's the perfect segue when we're talking about the situation in Ukraine. NK, could you share with us more about the situation that women are facing right now in Ukraine?
Hello, dear colleagues and audience. I am pleased to join you this panel discussion. And the today's topic of the panel is very important. And I really want every Ukrainian to hear me today and understand what I'm talking about. So that is why I'll speak my native language, Ukrainian. And Eugene will translate my speech from Ukrainian to English for everyone worldwide. Перш за все, я хочу сказати, що в Україні неймовірні жінки. Вони і волонтерять, і лікують, і готують, і ініціюють збори коштів, і виходять на площі різних країн, щоб наближати перемогу України в цій жорстокій війні. Тому що це наша батьківщина, тому що там живуть, де живуть, тому що де живуть наші діти і наші рідні. Відбувається геноцид українського народу. Хочуть вбити нас, хочуть вбити нашу культуру, і нашу історію, незалежність і нашу ідентичність. Тому наші жінки зараз переживають дуже важкі часи.
First of all, I want to say that there are an incredible women in our country, in Ukraine. They volunteer, they cook, they initiate fundraising, they also treat people as medical assistants. They also go to squares of different countries to make their voices be heard and actually speed up the victory of Ukraine. Why do we do this? Because this is our motherland. And this is the place where our children live. This is the place where our relatives live. And this is a genocide of Ukrainian people. They want to kill all of us, and that's why they commit the crimes against our culture, against our history, against our independence, and finally against our identity. Therefore, our women, they are going through very tough times at the moment.
Багато хто втратив житло. Мільйони стали вимушеними переселенцями всередині країни або за кордоном. І багато жінок втратило своїх дітей та рідних або під час бомбардування, або чоловіків на фронті. Багато жінок або пережили окупацію, або досі зараз знаходяться в окупації російськими військами.
Well, many people in our country, they have lost already their homes. Millions of people have lost, they were internally displaced or became refugees and went abroad. Many women lost their children and their husbands went to the battlefield. And now their relatives and our children, they constantly live under shelling and bombing. Many women either survived occupation or they are still under illegal occupation of the territories, as approximately 20% of the Ukrainian territory is currently illegally occupied by Russian troops.
Тільки коли Україна звільнює свої території, ми бачимо жахи окупації загарбниками. Всі можуть пам'ятати Бучу, Гостомель, Ірпінь та інші містечка. Страшні новини з Маріуполя, Вінниці та Одеси. Постійні обстріли Харкова. Нещодавно світ побачив жахи міста Ізюм. І це лише декілька міст серед тисяч у нашій країні.
Only now, at the moment when Ukraine started liberating our territories, all the world can see the horrors of war and occupation that was committed by invaders. Everyone can remember and go back into their memories on Bucha, Gostomel, Irpin, and many other towns around Kiev region. Terrible news coming from Mariupol, Vinnytsia, and Odessa. Constant shelling of Kharkiv. So all of that is on media. Recently, the whole world could see the horrors in the city of Izum. And there are just a few names and few cities and towns to name.
Окрім цього, російські військові використовують як зброю сексуальне насилля. Це вбиває українських жінок як фізично, так і морально.
Besides all of that, the Russian troops use sexual abuse against women as a weapon, as a military weapon, to kill and destroy and depress them not only physically, but emotionally, psychologically, morally after all.
На сьогодні ситуація по цьому питанню неймовірно складна. По-перше, багато жертв залякані і бояться говорити про сексуальне насилля над ними. А в них посттравматичний синдром, суїцидальний та шоковий стан.
Currently, the situation and on this issue is very complex and incredibly complicated. First of all, many victims of sexual violence, they do not talk about it. They are intimidated, scared to death, or just afraid to speak. They have post-traumatic syndromes, and many of them have suicidal or shock state or similar symptoms.
По-друге, близько 20% українських територій досі окуповано. Є дані, що на цих територіях тіла жертв часто жорстоко знищуються, аби приховати докази. Розслідування стане можливим тільки коли Україна відновить доступ до своїх територій. Окупанти ні українську сторону, ні міжнародні організації не допускає в повній мірі для оцінки ситуації.
Another point is that about 20% of the Ukrainian territory is now being illegally occupied. Neither the Ukrainian side nor the side of international investigating or other organizations are given permission to come there and fully assess the current situation. There are some evidence that are coming and basically testify that the occupied territories, at these occupied territories, the bodies of victims, their corpses, are often brutally destroyed, and this is done just to erase the evidence. A full investigation, therefore, is not possible and will be, only possible when Ukraine restores the access and the power on these territories.
Вже зрозуміло, що, на жаль, ці показники будуть дуже високими. Лише декілька прикладів жахливих історій, що офіційно задокументовано.
It is evident already that these stories and these cases will be terrible, and the statistical figures will be much higher. I will provide only a few examples of such stories, of horrific stories, horror stories that have already been officially documented and confirmed.
Організація Human Rights Watch представила докази, що на Харківщині російський військовий багато разів зґвалтував жінку, яка з родиною переховувалась у школі. Жінка розповіла правозахисникам, що військовий її бив та різав ножем обличчя, шию та волосся. Лише наступного дня вона змогла втекти до Харкова, де отримала першу медичну допомогу.
As you know, Human Rights Watch organization presented the evidence concerning a case when a Russian soldier repeatedly raped a woman in Kharkiv region, and they were hiding in a school, a local school there with her family. So the woman told the human rights activists that this soldier, he would cut her hair, cut her face, neck, and just to distort her with a knife. Only the other day, the next day, she managed to escape to Kharkiv, the city itself, and rescue, look for some medical care.
I would also love, NK, I mean, we've already learned so much from you sharing all of this, and I'd love to also, on that point, head to Pamela as well to tell us on the topic of what can people do. So what can organizations like No More do to elevate the issues that are faced by women in war zones that you were just speaking about, NK?
No worries. When organizations can do around the world is really put this topic in the forefront. Talk about it. When you see a story, a report, elevate it. Make sure that it stays within the media discussion that, sexual assault is happening in war zones like Ukraine at the moment. When we hear those stories, it's because there's a lot of silence and, again, a lot of underreporting. You don't get to see all the stories. We don't even know the stories of people that ultimately were killed, for example, right? They'll take that to their graves. So it's very important for organizations and for the public to understand that this is a tool of war. It happens in the same way that we see machinery, that we see other, destroyed buildings, and that, it's important to give our attention. So I think it's about elevating our voice. If anything, with many conflicts, you never know if wherever you're in the world might not be a conflict area, but it could be one day. So it's important that we keep on top of this topic and we don't silence it as it happens. So I think that's where, we would support any organization, and we're really proud to work with Avon on trying to bring this to the forefront and to give resources to organizations that want to help or want to do something in conflict areas.
That's the perfect segue to Angela. So as we heard, Avon works with women across the world, and I would love if you could tell us more about your commitment to reduce violence towards women.
Indeed, violence, unfortunately, doesn't happen just in the war zones. It happens around the world. 1 in 3 women would be the victim of an abusive relationship or violence during her lifetime. And this is a horrible statistics. Many of them don't even report. And we do have this situation globally, both in developing and developed markets. Together for now many years, we have realized that we can unite our voices together with our millions of representatives to recognize the signs. Women talk easier one with another. We understood quite early in our history of Avon that we could have the social impact of empowering one another and really address this deep issue, which is the inequality. That it is one of the roots of the domestic violence everywhere, is the lack of equality. And we tackle it in 2 fronts. Yes, on one hand side, we said we have to be there and working with amazing people like Pamela and her organization, and we share resources and collect and donate with NGOs around the world to support the frontline services of supporting women who have been already victims of domestic violence with shelters, legal support, working with legislators around the world to create a proper system, not only to prevent the violence, but as well support the victims. And equally, we engage, as I just called out, we engage our millions of representatives that in their communities, they themselves become agents of change and agents of support, know how to read the signs, how to understand if a woman it's not living her life in in a safe environment, and then guide her where would she find support. And I think it's our role, all of us together, through different means, from direct donations to speaking up, like NK is doing so passionately, to creating a better legislative system, to even raising our voice to stop the senseless war globally. We could do a better world, create a better world for women and of course a better world for all.
And NK, I mean, you have been able to use your voice to inspire so many different people, and I would love if you could speak to, as an artist, what role does music and the arts play in helping women during times like this?
Артисти та публічні особи під час війни стали активістами на інформаційному фронті. Кожен артист з України щосили кричить про війну та її, звичайно, наслідки. Я в багатьох інтерв'ю на іспаномовних та англомовних передачах розповідала ті страшні історії насилля над жінками, щоб привернути увагу до цієї, звичайно, теми. На благодійних акціях, виступах та подіях як артист я транслюю важливий меседж до світу. Війна в Україні має бути зупинена. Російські окупанти мають покинути нашу незалежну державу. І вони не мають права тероризувати наших жінок, наших дітей і в цілому всю націю, всіх українців. І сподіваюся, це пришвидшить процес притягнення до відповідальності тих, хто їх скоює.
As you know, artists and public people or people of publicity, so during the war we all got united and we became activists and kind of soldiers of the information battlefield. Every artist from Ukraine is literally shouting out, crying out the message, the truth about this war and its terrible consequences. I have told many times in these terrible stories and live witnesses in numerous interviews in Spanish and English language programs, TV shows, just to draw attention to this problem of violence and abuse, physical abuse done on women in Ukraine. This is done and I believe with the help of speeches, public performances, with charity actions, with such public events. All Ukrainians, they broadcast and they share, they disseminate a very important message to the world. So the war in Ukraine must be stopped. The Russian occupiers, they have no legal right to be on our territory. They should leave it. And because this is the territory of an independent state, they have no right to terrorize our women. They have no right to terrorize our children and Ukrainians in general. We hope that these messages and our efforts, they will just speed up the moment that we are waiting for the victory of Ukraine. And finally, that our efforts will bring to the justice those who are guilty in these crimes.
На жаль, ми не можемо повернути час назад та запобігти усім скоєним злочинам проти українських жінок. Але зараз ми можемо надати максимальну підтримку, розповсюдити інформацію, а відповідальні мають покарати винних.
Unfortunately, these are not us who are in power to turn the clock around, to turn the time back, but this is us who can and must prevent the war crimes. And finally, those who are in responsibility to punish the people who are guilty for the war crimes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, NK. And I think that I want to pose a final question to all of you, which is for all of our listeners, how can they support your work? How can they get involved to end gender-based violence towards women, particularly those in war zones? So maybe, Angela, let's start with you.
First of all, violence is never the answer, wherever in the world, against whomever. Violence is never the answer, and we deeply believe that beauty is strongly interlinked with peace. We've collected and donated more than $88 million to date, and we are not going to stop till we reach, hopefully, a better world for all. And my call for everyone is never stay silent thinking that your family and your immediate group of friends, it's safe. We are all connected. The entire humanity, we are responsible to create a better future for ourselves and for our children. So I'm asking everyone to do from the little gesture of sharing a call to join the movement and share our voice, to do steps to support a woman in need, or an NGO, or directly, it's reading the signs of the abuse and intervening when they see something is not right. We all have to be much more active to prevent and combat violence around the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'd love to go to you now. Pamela, can you expand on how can people support the critical work that No More is doing?
I think when it relates to kind of sexual conflict, for the people who are, privileged enough to be able to help, I would always invite them to remember when they see the scenes, of, distressed people moving, that this is also happening, that this is another place that is in need. We tend to think on the tangible, but this will destroy, a person's lifetime. So please look for organizations that are in the area working and that can actually provide this type of support. If you can't donate, it's, as Angela said, about speaking up. I'm really hopeful. In the pandemic, for example, we saw how many people just got very concerned about victims of domestic violence in the house. And they started, helping, contacting organizations, and we've never seen more reports from bystanders, just people wanting to get involved. So in the case of sexual violence in war zones, I make the same invitation, especially today in Peace Day. Let's, make sure that we know what is happening and that we can raise our voice together. And that will surely create the impact that we need.
And can you also share, are there any big campaigns or initiatives coming up? What's on the horizon for you all?
For us, one of the things that No More does is elevate the voice of organizations that are on the ground and working with them. So that's the work that we will continue to do. We'll continue to put in the forefront. We're a global organization. So especially what are those organizations? What are they doing? So people can contact, donate, and carry on working with companies like Avon to make sure that this, with their huge voice, this is something that we keep on thinking about as long as we're seeing, war in Ukraine and wars all over the world.
Angela, I'd love for you to also jump in here and share what's on the horizon for Avon. What are some of the big initiatives that you all are passionate about going forward and supporting?
It's just upcoming right now in the next weeks. We call it the 16 days against violence, where we are going every day as to raise our voice and create different concepts activation to really make people becoming aware of the horrible statistics, both in the war zones and out, of what women are getting confronted with over their lifetime, and what every one of us can actually do to prevent and as well combat violence. And then we are engaging our millions of representatives to talk in their micro communities about this issue. These are women, when they meet together, they don't talk just about the lipstick or the opening a brochure. They equally talk about their life issues. They talk about love. They talk about pain. They talk about hope. They talk about how to create a better life for themselves and for those around themselves. I think that's a perfect opportunity and the social impact we want to create by bringing that information and that empowerment and that support for women to be able to free themselves from any kind of restriction of their freedom, especially financially, when it comes to the equality of chance and right to the education. And all of these are going to contribute, hopefully, to any powerful women who would be able to live safe lives in dignity.
It's incredible. And when we look at women like NK who are bravely sharing their stories, and also Pamela, who is doing this important work, what are some of the other examples that you've come across that you'd like to share with our audience through your work with Avon that you think really more people need to know about?
From our perspective, I would say all the work done around gender-based violence, around domestic violence. We did a campaign with Avon on verbal abuse. Just as Angela was saying, the numbers of victims around the world on gender-based violence are huge. It's 1 in 3. I mean, everybody has been affected. Everybody that is hearing me likely knows a victim or has been a victim. So it is very important for us to make sure that we are talking about this topic and how this topic trickles. The reason why we're talking about sexual violence in war zones is because gender-based violence in all other areas is rife, right? For example, sexual assault in developed countries has a 3% only prosecution rates. It's almost free. Let's not even talk about other kinds. So I think keeping gender-based violence on the agenda is very important, and with voices like NK, like Angela's, and many people that are hearing us today, I'm sure that is something that we will battle, and I'm very hopeful about what can be achieved.
And for our last question, NK, I would love to pose to you, how can people support the women in Ukraine? Please tell our audience, what can they do to get involved?
Я закликаю всіх долучитися до наших ініціатив. Ми зараз проводимо велику кількість благодійних акцій та концертів, щоб збирати кошти на допомогу людям, які страждають від війни. Під час моїх виступів з кожного квитка йде донат в Україну. Це і на гуманітарні потреби, і збори на амуніцію, і підтримка сімей у складному стані, і, звичайно, на лікування.
So I would say that people should not keep silent, and there are numerous initiatives, events, campaigns that are aimed at fundraising and helping those people who have suffered already from this war. I also host and I give lots of concerts, and people who come and buy my tickets, from each ticket they donate to the Ukrainian army. And not only, this money go also for humanitarian aid, for medical services, for those who have suffered already, for ammunition, and for other purposes.
не мовчати, не мовчати, розповсюджувати інформацію, робити репости, щоб світ знав правду. Українці не допустять, щоб війна стала чимось буденним. Ми не можемо залишити безнакараними тих, хто знущається над нашими жінками, молодими дівчинами, підлітками та взагалі всієї нації. Якщо ми дозволимо, вони підуть далі. Не можна допускати ще більше жертв. І по-третє, вірити в Україну, підтримувати нас. Кожен з постраждалих жінок має відчувати, що весь світ зараз з нею і готовий допомагати. Попереду ще дуже складний етап психологічного лікування після цих жахів, про які ми вже знаємо сьогодні. Я молюся і впевнена, що перемога буде за нами вже дуже скоро. Слава Україні! Дякую.
So finally, I would say not to keep silence. Do not silence the problem. That's the biggest message. We have done already so much, and every one of us can do our little thing to help Ukraine, to repost the message and share the words, the words of truth. Do everything that you can to share the truth about this war. Then join the initiatives. We believe that Ukraine will win, and every person, every woman there in Ukraine should be assured that the world is there with her. She's not alone. She's not fighting on her own. Every word of support is valuable. I believe the future is for us, and we will soon win. And one more important issue, we will also have to tackle the issue of rehabilitation after this war, of coming back to life. This is not the end of the story. I pray for all of us to be united and for Ukraine to win. And I'm praying for all of the women in Ukraine. And finally, I would say the message that you well know, glory to Ukraine.
Angela, is there anything else that you would like to leave us with in reflection to these beautiful, beautiful words that NK just shared? Thank you, NK.
I'm just going to join NK indeed. Let's free the world from violence. Let's stand by the women who have been through such a horrible time and build a better future.
Pamela, anything that you would like to add as a final reflection as we come up on time?
For NK, we need more people like you that are role models, that inspire other women to do in their trade whatever they can do to help their fellow citizens or other women around the world that are suffering from this. It's incredible work. We're extremely supportive, and for everyone hearing us today, this is a topic that doesn't get reported in the media as much as we would want to, but as much as we can put that pressure, make sure these news stories come out, that we can all feel the pain that women, men, boys, and girls are feeling, then I think we're gonna move this agenda forward.
Thank you.
I absolutely agree. And I mean, we have one more minute left. So, NK, I think, of course, your words and story are so inspiring. Any other reflections you would like to leave our audience with?
Slava Ukraini. and I want, if you can just say for me, it will be very good. Heroям slava. Glory to heroes. Because every Ukrainian just tell this. So Slava Ukraini, and you say
Heroin Slava.
Yes, thank you very much, girls. It's so important for us. We need to be together, and we need to fight together, and we need to be like very, very strong. So I know that everything gonna be okay, and everything we will we will do everything to do our life better.
I hope that that is what our audience leaves with. Heroin Slava, thank you all so much for joining me today. I know that I feel so touched and so inspired by the work that you all are doing, and I hope that everyone can find ways to support you. Thank you.